Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's talk. We start 2023 with a very special guest from Scotland, Joanna Mawdsley. She is the head of learning at Victoria and Albert Museum in Dundee. And Joanna will present for us today the learning engagement and social impact in Victoria and Albert Museum in Dundee. Later on, we will have an open discussion. And please, during the presentation, mute yourself. Joanna, you can start with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anissa. Good morning, everyone. It's really, I'm really happy to be here. And I didn't realise I was starting the year for your programme, so that's quite an honour for me. So thank you. So yeah, I'm just going to talk through. I've quite a lot of slides, lots of visuals. So I hope it's not too much, but I hope it gives you a flavour of the type of work that we do here at the V&A Museum in Dundee. So this is the museum. You can see this is what it looks like currently. It's a very contemporary museum, and I've been involved in the museum and the project since 2014, so quite a long time. So I was involved when we didn't have the museum. The museum wasn't actually built, so I was brought on to the team back in 2014 to kind of manage all the learning and outreach programs across the city and across the region, because this was a big capital project for the city and for Scotland. So we really needed to get the local community on board. So I'm just going to jump forward to my next slide, which isn't jumping forward. It's always the way. Let me see if that works. Oh, why is my slide not moving? Sorry about this. This was fine when I did a test. Anissa, do you know why my slide might not be moving?
No, but maybe you can exit the full screen and start sharing it again.
Yeah. Sorry about this, everyone. You would think we'd be such experts at this now after years of being on Zoom calls. Let me just stop sharing for a second, and then I will share again and find my presentation. Oh, it's just not going forward. This is really peculiar. Let me try again. I wonder if I should just keep it here. Well, let's try this. Ah, is that okay now? The second slide.
Okay, yeah, now it's okay.
So I'm so sorry about that, crazy. So yeah, so this image that you can see on the slide, this is what the site of the museum looked like just 10, 15 years ago. So it's completely, and Asa, you'll know because you've been to the city, it doesn't look like this at all now.
Yes.
So the museum itself is part of a 30-year waterfront regeneration of the city of Dundee. So there's lots of different cultural regeneration projects going along the whole waterfront. And they've been happening since 2000, so for quite some time now. So we're kind of 2/3 of the way through that regeneration project. And this whole area of the waterfront looks completely different, as you saw in my opening slide. So the V&A in Dundee was designed by the renowned Japanese architect Kengo Kuma. Some of you might know his work. He was kind of just starting to come up, I think, back in sort of 2012 when he was appointed, rising to one of those kind of super architects, but at the time wasn't quite as known as some architects. But now he's obviously done the Olympics and all buildings all over the globe. And this is his only building in the UK, so it's a real coup for the city. Dundee's also a UNESCO City of Design, which obviously ensures that because we are V&A, we're a V&A museum, we're part of the V&A, the Victoria and Albert family, but we're a different museum from the big V&A in South Kensington. So our museum is very much a museum of design. So having UNESCO as the City of Design, we work very much in partnership with them. And the museum was kind of, I suppose, born out of conversations with various partners across the city, two of which are the two big universities that are based in Dundee. So it's the University of Dundee and Abertay University. So we work very closely with both universities. Obviously, we work very closely with the local council, Scottish Enterprise, which is an arm of the Scottish government, and V&A, which is our kind of big sister brand in London. So we're part of the wider V&A family. And now we have the V&A in London, the V&A here in Dundee in Scotland. We have the V&A Museum of Childhood, which is in another part of London. We have V&A East London, which is on the old kind of Commonwealth Games site. And then we have V&A in Staffordshire, where the potteries museums are, V&A Wedgwood. So just a few, I'm not going to read everything on this slide, but just to give you a few a bit of context about the museum in general. So as I said, I've been involved since pre-open, and we opened in September 2018. So we're going towards our 5th year of being open, which is actually crazy. Although for two of those years we were closed because of COVID, but we still had lots of programs online. So just some stats about visitors, exhibitions we've displayed, and the economic impact, I think, is probably quite a big one to talk about, because Dundee as a city, it was a very sort of prosperous city in the 19th and early 20th century, and then, like a lot of British cities, the manufacturing industries, etc., just stopped. Everything just got closed down, and then it went into sort of disrepair, let's say, and there was, people were leaving because there was no work and all of that. So I think this kind of cultural-led regeneration, in the first 12 months of the museum being open, it was around £75 million was into the economy. So I think it's just, it's just saying that cultural regeneration is definitely a way forward for cities like Dundee. It brings in tourists, it has hotels, we have people wanting to stay in the city, students who come and study, then they want to stay, etc. So I'm sure you all know this. And then just some of the sort of very light touch social impact. We had around 60,000 schools in the first 2 years before COVID. But before we actually opened, we did a lot of projects to engage people, and I'll go into them in a bit more detail in a minute, but we had about 100,000 people engaged before we actually built and opened the museum, which is, it's quite a big number. So this is just an image of, this was actually the building site before the museum was built. So we had these hoardings. So to start to engage with the local community, we got 2 local comic designers. So I don't know, some of you might know this, Dundee is a big comic city. It's where the Beano and the Dandy were born. And it used to have a really big sort of print and newspaper magazines. It still does, actually. and the Beano is still produced in Dundee. So we very much drew on that kind of very local design story of comic books and the Beano to tell the story of the kind of objects and stories that we might be telling when the museum's open, in this giant sort of comic strip along all the hoardings to hide the actual building site. So this got some of the local people talking about what we were doing. And back in 2014, when this very first project started as a bit of an engagement project, there was just 3 of us in the learning team at that time. Now I've got 9 people in the team, so we've grown. But at this time, we just had 3 of us working on this project, and we worked with some local freelancers. And this was the first local engagement project we did in the city, and Kengo Kuma, the architect, actually said he wanted the museum to be a living room for the city. So we took that literally and we said, okay, we're going to do a project called Living Room for the City, thinking about what people, what is it about the spaces that we feel safe in, we feel like we want to be creative, those kind of collective experiences, what do those kind of spaces feel like? So we just went out into the city, into local church halls, into shopping centres, and did these kind of very, very practical design workshops. And just, it was a really nice way, I think, for us to meet local people and talk to them a bit more about what the museum was going to be, because some people didn't really want it, you know, they thought it was too much money to be spent on a museum. They didn't know what the V&A brand was. That was something that happened in London. It was very much somebody else's stuff. So it was quite a nice way for us to kind of just have some really open conversations with local people about the benefits of the museum, not only from a sort of economic impact, but also that social impact, how this can actually change your health and well-being to have this kind of offer, this resource on your doorstep. So this lasted throughout the summer of 2014 as the first engagement project. And here I've just got a few slides up for, we did lots of different projects in the subsequent years. So in 2015, we did a project called Design in Motion, and you can see we've got a big coach bus there. So we teamed up with an Edinburgh gallery who have this bus that goes all around Scotland, and it shows exhibitions of contemporary art or design. So what we did, we teamed up with that organisation. We borrowed their coach, and we put an exhibition inside the coach, and we did this kind of vinyl wrap of the building, and we literally took it all over Scotland. So we went to around 75 different venues across Scotland, including a lot of the quite isolated islands off the west coast of Scotland, and Orkney and Shetland. And I think this was a project that was like both a learning engagement campaign, but also a bit of a marketing campaign, because whilst we were out, people saw the bus and would come up and ask us questions. What is this? What is it all about? So it was a really nice way of engaging people kind of out with the local and on a more national scale. And then we did projects with local schools in 2016, Schools Design Challenge, where we gave them a kind of literally a design challenge to solve. We had a lovely project called a Community Garden, which was a very local project in Dundee, and it was working with people in recovery. And we have a space just facing where the museum is. It's like a green space. So one of those areas, they're all different sections of gardens around this big green space. And the council gave us one of those spaces. So this group of people turned it into a community garden and worked with a landscape designer and a designer from the art school. And they basically designed it, co-designed it together, built it together, and now still look after it sort of, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years on. So that was a really nice project, working with people I suppose, who wouldn't usually engage with a museum, you could say. It would be like they wouldn't really, you know, they'd be like, well, why would I go to a museum? It's not really for me. So that was a really nice project to get some people who weren't thinking that we were for them. And then another project in the bottom right hand corner called the Bonnet Makers Project, and we have a lot of very traditional trades and designs in the city. The bonnet makers being one of them, which is literally people who used to make the kind of hats for lots of different sort of people and organisations. So we got local school children to kind of design a 21st century hat, essentially. So a really easy, nice way in. And this was with primary school pupils. So what this did was we had a big sort of fashion catwalk exhibition in the local shopping centre. So we got a lot of the parents and the grandparents and the carers come along to the fashion show to see the kids in the fashion show with the hats that they designed. And again, I think it was that way of engaging with people who were saying, I'm not really interested in this museum, it's not really going to do anything for me. But through the children and through their engagement, you know, we were having those conversations, which was really nice. These are just some stills from lots of different projects across the city. So we spent the first couple of years out and about. We did lots of these kind of talks, PowerPoint talks in community centres, just design workshops. We did a lot of the summer sort of gala days in the city where we'd take sort of stuff out with us and just talk to people, essentially, literally just talking to people. These are a few slides from our community garden project. So you can see it was very much a co-designed project. So the designers didn't just come in and say, okay, we're going to do this. It was, what do you want from this space? How do you want this to be? What would you like it to do for you? How would you like to use it? How can this make you feel better? How can this make you feel more connected to the museum? So you can see some of the kind of brainstorming sessions and post-it sessions that people just wrote down their ideas on. And then this is the group with the finished prototype, and then on site digging the actual garden site, which is lovely. And it's so nice to see that used today by lots of the volunteers who did that. Another national project we did was a project called the Scottish Design Relay, where we worked across 6 locations across Scotland and with different designers and manufacturers, really drawing on that local design and manufacturing and making talent. So very, very sort of rooted in Scottish tradition, I suppose, Scottish design stories. And we worked with about 24 young people across Scotland. So this was a slightly different age group to some of the other projects. Often quite, we still, you know, hard to reach young people, you could term them, who again, maybe not so interested in the museum as a concept, but through these types of projects, you know, we got them on board. And quite a few of these young people then went on to apply to college courses to actually study design and or manufacturing. So that was a really nice result of that project. Lots of other things that we do as part of the programme. We do a lot of work around what we call creative ageing. So we work a lot with community-based organisations locally, but also nationally. So a couple of these images are from projects that we've done in local care homes with people with strokes and dementia and Alzheimer's. We do a big access program where we do lots of tours with sign language, audio described. We have a series of what we call sensory friendly days in the museum throughout the year for people living with or caring for people with autism or Asperger's. So this is all part of what we term our sort of access program, which again, I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And in lockdown, we did, you know, we were still here, we were still doing lots of work. But as we all did back then, it seems like a blink of an eye since it was the lockdown. We had to do lots of the programme online. So we did a lot of our kind of live tours in the museum. So you can see my colleague Peter up in the top right hand corner. He's in the museum and he's live to, I think we did a project with about 57 care homes across the whole of the UK. So we were doing tours to this kind of whole group of care homes from the museum. So we engaged with thousands of people actually during lockdown, which was fascinating. And then we worked very locally with a local Muslim ladies group, the Amana Ladies Group, who they've been with us since early 2016, so they've worked with us for quite some time. And a lot of the ladies you can see in the top left image are now trained tour guides, and they do tours in different languages. So they do tours in their own community languages. So that's just a fantastic resource for us. And then in the bottom, the 2 slides on the bottom are images from one of our health and wellbeing trails that we've been trialing in the last year with, and we've partnered with the NHS, and basically we've created a set of trails, like physical paper trails, and these are all on our website if you did want to go and have a look. That we've created with local art and design students and also trainee doctors. And basically it's saying this trail will help you, you know, increase your sort of mental health and well-being by just coming to the museum, you know, chatting to people, just having a really nice time in the day where you're not thinking about anything else. You just do the trail, you just enjoy it, and there's no pressure. So these trails are available from GP practices across the city, so people can actually be prescribed the trails for their health and well-being. So we kind of do a lot around social prescribing, so this work fits into that really nicely. Oh, this is just, I just thought this might be interesting for you to see some of the kind of partners that we work with. So lots of different partners there. Some of them are the big partners like the Scottish Government and the universities and the NHS, and then others are very local partners like the care groups and the dementia working group and daycare centres. So that was just to give you a flavour, because really I think for learning and engagement we have to have a really great team of partners that we work with. That's how we get results. So it's not about just one person doing the work, it's about how we can do it better together in partnership. So yeah, lots of these partners, and they're always growing and changing. The list gets bigger and bigger, which is great. So the next few slides are more focused on our families program. So I should have said at the beginning, all of our programs are free to access for all of our groups. So we work with all different ages and abilities. So basically we work with babies, so 0 years all the way to, you know, 99 years. So we work with everybody and in between. We have many different access points into the program. So obviously we have a families program, which is, it's a really nice fun, it's engaging, but it's also rooted in really good design learning, and it's really design led in terms of how we deliver it, but also what we do. So when we think about, we could just put some things out for kids to play with, we could do that, but actually what we do is we buy very much toys that have been designed with very specific learning outcomes built into them, so that the kids are learning through play, which again, I'm sure you're all aware of this. So it kind of encourages, I suppose, for us, that sort of intergenerational learning. So, you know, the kids come in with families or carers or a big brother or a big sister, and it's kind of encouraging them to kind of learn together in this very open, free, welcoming, accessible space. We have 2 dedicated learning studios in the museum, which are very much a kind of, they're very public, they're very open, and Inessa and I were just chatting before everybody joined, and 15-20 years ago, the learning studios, the learning wing of a museum was often right down in the basement, hidden. You couldn't find it. It was like, yeah, we can bring the children in, but let's just put them away so nobody can hear them and they're not going to make any noise and upset anybody. However, now it's changed completely. Our learning wing is pretty much in the same space as the gallery, the main gallery where we have our paid exhibitions, the big ticketed shows. It's just at the opposite side of the corridor, so it's given equal status in a way, which is really fantastic. So it's very public, it's very open, and it's all free. It's funded by a part of the lottery, so it's called the People's Postcode Lottery. So that's how it's funded. All of our learning programs are predominantly funded by that, and lots of other trusts and foundations, as well as core funding from the government. So these are just some really lovely images of some of the families programs that we do. We work a lot directly with designers. So this image in the bottom right hand corner was this big, huge maze that we got designed by the designer Yinka Alori, who's, again, his star is on the rise. He's just so big right now in the UK, especially. And he did this for us last summer. So, and then he actually very kindly did this beautiful wallpaper for our learning studios, which I don't know, Inessa, if that was up when you came in, the lovely wallpaper in the studios. That's all these bright patterns and colours, which is just is lovely for families to have this fun, colourful space rather than this kind of clinical white cube, which you don't feel like you can make any mess. It's kind of saying, come in, have fun, enjoy yourself, be joyful, and have a great time whilst learning more about design. And what we do every year when we do have a big exhibition, we theme our learning programs alongside the exhibition. So we had a big exhibition last year on the work of designer and choreographer Michael Clark. Not sure if you know who he is. He's quite big on the sort of contemporary dance world. And he's Scottish-born designer, choreographer, dancer. So we had this whole programme about dance and identity and costume. And we worked with another designer called Leslie Barnes, who makes these beautiful design toys. Here you can see in the top left slide, all based around Bauhaus ballet. So even though it kind of looks quite fun, it's kind of rooted in this kind of design practice. And she did a lovely studio for us in the summer, and we had these beautiful costumes that kids could just try on, and it's great fun. They're just having loads and loads of fun, but they're learning in this really sort of inspiring and colourful and friendly environment. And hopefully by bringing in the little ones, you get the big ones on board. So you got the little toddlers coming in having the best time, and mum, dad or granny or granddad might be thinking, well, actually that was quite good, I quite enjoyed that, I might go back and see something for myself. So this is what we're always trying to do, is like, how do we build our audience really through all these programs that we run. This slide shows you some of our trails. So as well as the trails we do for sort of an older audience I talked about earlier, we do lots of trails for, as you can imagine, for families. So these are just free to pick up, and you can come in and just pick the trails up, and they just give you that added experience of discovering the museum, whether it's through the architecture or through the Scottish Design Gallery collection, or outside around our surrounding areas. And we also have a really lovely resource area in the museum where people can come in and just read lots of beautiful art and design books. And again, that's funded by a really generous funder. So you can see some of the books that we have a children's section. So we have these lovely books that kids can just come in and read and have a look at with the families when they want to. We do lots of co-design projects. That's really at the heart of how we work with communities. We co-design with them. So this project shows you, it's the designs for the outside of the museum. So the very first image, I don't know, you could see we've got all this space around the museum, which is right by the river, it's called the Outside Plaza. So you can see in the top left, we've got this design for basically like an outdoor playground that we worked with a local women's collective in Glasgow, who do these kind of huge big murals on the floor, on the walls. So they worked with local groups to come up with the design, and then we literally got it painted outside the museum, and it was on site for about 6 months. So that local families, actually everyone, it wasn't just families who liked it. We had big adults coming along and running around on the squiggly lines and having great fun outside the museum. Because I suppose in some ways, you know, when you build a museum and then you have these programs, you're expecting people to come to you all the time. Whereas what we were finding when we were open, we were still having people who just felt too intimidated to come through the doors. So they didn't want to come in. They felt, oh, I'm not really sure I know what to do when I get in there. I don't really know what's in there, and I'm not really sure if it's for me. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to. No, I'm not going to come. So this project was lovely because it was all outside the museum. So we had lots of people who just came down and literally ran around and had just the best time ever. It was the summer, which is key in Scotland. We had to just stop after a few months because the weather got so bad. But what this did, I think, was when people did come down, and if they'd not been into the museum, they actually thought, oh, you know, maybe this is not so bad. Maybe I will just go in the front door and have a little peek and see what's inside. So again, it's kind of, as well as kind of that learning and community and social impact, it's about how we build our audiences and how we give them the confidence to come in and use this incredible resource that's in the city. And it's free. It's all free to get in. We do lots with local young mums, young parents. So they come in and they're actually doing qualifications. So this group you see on screen, it's a group in the city of young mums, and they're doing Scottish qualifications to get into university. So they're getting that second chance to get into university. So we do these programs in different types of design. So we had a whole session 2 years ago when we had a big show about Mary Quant, obviously on fashion design, and all the young mums can bring the children in. The children can be supported while the young mums are learning all the skills for fashion, and they do all their essays and they use the collection for inspiration. So it's a really nice partnership between ourselves, the Scottish sort of qualifications authority, and the local community groups. And also a lot of those young mums probably wouldn't come in if it wasn't for this project. So now they are our future visitors, which is just fab. And then just, I think this final slide on families, this is our Design Busters resource, which is both a printed resource for children and families with all different design challenges in it. So in COVID, we sent about 20,000 of these out in the post to lots of families across Dundee. There's also a a hotline that kids can ring up. You can see the phone in the top left corner. You can ring the phone and a voice will say to you, this week's design challenge is, and the kids can kind of solve the design challenge, and they send the images in on social, and it's just really fun. So if you do want to check that out, that's all on our website. Have a look and see what else is there. So you can see, again, this is just a selection of some of the partners we work with. So again, similar to the other programme, big partners like NHS and the universities, but very local groups as well that we work with. We're also, we've got quite a few awards for our family programme over the last few years. So yeah, it's good. We're obviously doing something right. So it feels quite nice. It's a really good programme. So then we go on to the work we do at school. So it's kind of similar, you know, we have a lot of programs that basically that are rooted in the curriculum. So the schools team kind of work with teachers to design the programs that we can get the children to come in and really benefit from, because I think, you know, all of you will know it's really difficult to get children out of school into museums now. Cost of travel, but just also the time that's needed to get them out of school into museums for school trips. So it has to be really relevant. I think it has to be worthwhile, and it has to speak to the curriculum. So what's really great with what we have managed to establish is the local council actually fund a seconded teacher to us. So every year we get a teacher coming to work in the museum. So we have that teacher who can work with the team, write all the resources, and that's fully supported by the city council. So really, I suppose that's the city council, you know, having faith that we're going to do this well, because they're giving us that resource of having a teacher in the team, and he just brings so much to the program. It's just wonderful to have the teacher on board. We do a lot of work with schools in the communities about designing their own communities, how they make them better, and working with designers, co-designing different projects. This is just a few more images of these kind of co-design projects out and about and in the studios. They can do them all on architecture. They work with contemporary artists to produce things. So there's all kinds of things happening across the schools program, as well as these standard tours of the, you know, of the big paying exhibitions, where they do all kinds of practical hands-on design workshops as well in the museum, but also in schools and across the community. I think a really great example of something quite recently, we've got a brilliant exhibition on at the moment called It's All About Plastic. It's called Plastic Remaking Our World. So it tells the story of plastics from its kind of the invention of plastics in the late 19th, early 20th century, right up until the problem of plastic that we've all got now. So this has really struck a chord, I think, with local schools, because obviously lots of, you know, school children are much more aware of the problem of climate change, I think, than the older generations are. So we've had massive engagement with schools with this exhibition. And actually we got lots of schools to co-curate a section of the exhibition, which is called The Beach. And this is literally the beach image that you see in the top right-hand corner. We got Scottish school children to send in, you know, lots of rubbish that they found on the beach in their local area, and it was put in. We've actually made a beach as part of the exhibition, and that's the image you can see there. So I think there's something about how the children feel part of the exhibition, as well as being engaged in the subject matter. That's really important. And also this is such a relevant subject right now. So we've produced a range of resources to kind of help teachers teach about this kind of problem, but also what are the design challenges in there? How can we make this better for the next generation? So one of the things we do is produce a lot of resources for schools. So this is just a few examples of those. Our sort of sister organisation in London, B&A in London, also does really great resources. I'm sure you're all aware of them. So ours are very similar to those. And there's just some of the partners we work with the schools programme. So we've actually been working with the Design Museum in Helsinki over the last few years and sharing practice with what they're doing in schools there, which is, yes, some really, really interesting work. And finally, I am on to my last few slides. So the last programme I'm going to talk about is our Young People's programme. So we have a Young People's Collective who've been on board since 2017. So a lot of them have been here for quite some time. And these are a group of young people aged 14 to 24. And basically they are, we kind of ask them for a lot of advice, I suppose. You know, how do we get more young people into the museum? What appeals to you? What would you like to see the museum doing? All of those things. So they're a really very vocal group of young people, probably the most diverse group of young people we have in the entire museum, which is interesting. And they helped curate the actual big opening weekend back in 2018 when the museum opened. They worked with a big events company in Glasgow and London and produced this big 3D festival. You can see them in the middle there with Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister they've met. So they were on site with the architects, and they do all kinds of really incredible projects. And many of them start and then they move on and go off to university. But basically it's about how we can represent young people's voices in the museum and what we do, and really about how we can be relevant to this particular audience. And I'm sure lots of you are aware, it's like often it's like, how do we get young people into the museum? Like, how do we get them to come in and enjoy it? So basically, you just ask them what they want and you try and give it to them and let them do it. So let them co-curate and design programs. I'm just flicking through, these are just lots of different programs that the Young People's Collective have curated and run for lots of different groups across the city. They've curated exhibitions with our exhibitions team. They do online work with lots of organisations across Scotland, but also across the UK, working very closely with designers. They worked with the Turner Prize winning designers Assemble. They did this big project here. This was actually during lockdown. And these are just some of the most recent programmes they've been doing in partnership with South Kensington, so in London. So our young people in Dundee and the young people's groups in London have worked very closely together on this creative careers festival called Upstart. So it's all about, if you're a young person, you want to get a career in the creative industries, how do you even go about doing that? So what do you do? So this is what they've been doing for the last sort of 12 months or so. And they've just won an award at the British Museum that they went to a big ceremony in December. So they're just a brilliant group of young people, some of the partners that they work with. And that is finally my last slide. So thank you very much for listening and all your patience whilst I babbled on. And if anyone has any questions, more than happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for this enlightening and quite inspiring presentation. Please unmute yourself if you have any question or any comment about the presentation.
Hi, Nessa.
Hi.
Hi, Joanna. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Dorina. Sorry, I'm outside, so that's why I turned off the video. Well, it was very interesting presentation. A lot of ideas and inspiration as well. Actually, as you know, Inessa and I, we are running actually an NGO that is based on museum development here in Albania, and the idea behind it, to bring heritage and education, culture to the audience, to community. And well, we cannot make comparisons between countries because it's totally different mindset, and so support as well. And in regard of the what you do, lots of educational programs, and if I'm not wrong, they were free of charge for the, so yeah. And you also presented the partners that you work with, and of course the other stakeholders and supporters that you have, which is, of course, it's something that is missing in the Balkan areas, let's say it. So it's difficult to find that kind of support to run a culture or a museum here.
Mhm.
So based on your experience that you have, so what is that? What is that magical to attract uh, the the funding and the supporters uh, to go further, you know, with
Mhm.
the programs and the projects? Because that's the luck that we
Yeah.
generally museums have, not only here, everywhere, but speaking for a small country, but with the willing to do more, that
Mhm.
would be very valuable for us,
Mhm.
for the audience as well, to better understand what would be that that.
I mean, it's a really great question, and I wish I could give you a formula and then you could do it, but I don't think it's not that easy. We know that, and you know, and Essa and I were just chatting before we went live, and it, you know, certainly in the UK, the kind of it's changed quite a lot, I would say, over the last sort of 15 years or so, where maybe when I first started working in museums, sort of in the late 1990s, for example, the learning work was seen as a kind of little bit of an add-on over there. You know, it was kind of something that was quite nice to do, but it wasn't it certainly wasn't the main focus of the museum or the gallery at that time. I think it takes time, like a lot of this stuff, but I also think it's about evidence-based practice. So I think, given that, you know, there's this organization that you're all kind of part of, and it's about sharing that practice, but also, really, I suppose it's without that kind of community engagement and that sort of social impact, really, one could argue, what is the relevance of a museum? You know, and I know we might be sort of, that's quite a difficult question to ask, but actually museums are also about people as well as objects. So I think the two things need to be equally as important. Of course, museums and galleries care for objects and works of art, etc. That is absolutely vital. But I think in order for those objects and works of art to be appreciated and to have value, then you need to value the people who come through the doors. And the people who come through the doors surely can't be the same people all the time, because then it's just not, you know, it's not working, you know, the system is not working. But I think it's about, you know, we still, I mean, we are very lucky. We get good funding, and I'm not gonna sit here and say we don't get good funding, but we have to really work very hard for the funding that we get. You know, we have to do lots of proposals, lots of pitches to different types of trusts and foundations and philanthropists, but also we have to constantly make the case to the government that the work that we do is valuable. So I suppose that idea of the kind of economic impact of a museum, but also the social impact and the economic impact, are both so important. And we did an economic impact report that was in one of my first slides. 5 years on, we're just in the midst of doing a social impact report. So we're pulling together what are those tangible outcomes that we've made a real difference to people's lives through the work that we do. So in turn, I think that helps the funding model, because you're saying, look, you know, we've engaged with all these school children, and we've raised attainment, we've raised their learning, or, you know, we've managed to keep X amount of students in the city because the museum's here through these programs. So it's not an easy thing, and I think it is a kind of time, there's a lot of time needed to be invested there, because you need time to build the audiences up, and you literally need time to, you know, if you start working with families, you could say, you could do a kind of study. If you work with a family, you've got a child of 5, and then 5 years later, what is that learning looking like when the child's 10 through that engagement with the museum? So it's that kind of evidence, I think, is like super important to try and show, to kind of lever that funding and say museums are definitely much more about people. I'm not going to say than objects, but people and objects should be given the same level of status in terms of why do we have museums. I think when COVID hit, I think we all questioned what the relevance was of what we were doing, and why were we spending so much money on these big institutions, because what were they bringing to the local, especially I think in terms of that local engagement, why are we spending all this money on this building in this city? You know, what is it for? Why is it important to have it? So it's like going back to those really basic kind of, why are we even here, and why is that important, and why does that, you know, we can say, oh, you know, they enrich people's lives. Well, they kind of do if you go in them, but if you don't, it doesn't really have any effect on you. So it's kind of, yeah, sorry, I'm kind of rambling because I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. I do think it takes time, but I think it's about that evidence base, and it's maybe starting off with quite small projects, but they have very, you know, they have a long lasting and a big impact, I suppose.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's not an easy question and answer in the same time. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any other question? If you can unmute yourself. Yes, Yasmina, please.
I would just like to say hello to everyone. I thank Joanna for beautiful presentation of huge work. You know, that was really, really huge. I would just like to ask her, because I'm from Serbia, from a small museum, which is actually an archaeological museum with excellent materials from the Roman times. But we have, I think that all museums today have a problem with the public, with the visitors. We don't have enough people interested in coming to the museums.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, in in Balkans, I will say again, like previous person, but I forgot the name. Sorry, I didn't remember the name. We've got lots of problems with the museums.
Mm-hmm.
But the main problem is you can do a lot of enthusiastic work, try to engage community, try to do everything, but whole atmosphere is more like, oh, we really don't need museums. That's not interesting. We don't want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I have to say that there are some people who like to come to the museum, but lots of our stuff we do, like workshops, lectures and stuff like that, we don't have any audience, you know. It's terrible. And they always say, I would love to go there, but you never do anything. And it's like, what's the problem? We are doing it.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, did you have the same problem?
Mm-hmm.
Because
yes.
you've been talking about that during that you at the beginning it was difficult, and I really didn't catch how did you solve that? It was probably huge work with the community, or I don't know, a personal contact or whatever. Just few words on that.
No, Jasmine, I think it's a brilliant question, and we haven't solved that yet. We still have people in the city who say, I am not remotely interested in that museum. I think it's a waste of money. I think it's rubbish. There's nothing, all of those things. We also have You know, the TripAdvisor reviews that we all get those. We went through a phase of having really awful TripAdvisor reviews. So we were like, oh my God, you know, what are we going to do? Like, this is awful. So firstly, and really honestly, I think there's always going to be people who just are not going to engage with the museum, and you can't win them over. It doesn't matter what you do. So that's that. The flip side to that is, I think what we've tried to do over the years is, I think a lot of those people were at the very beginning. We were literally going out to them. We were taking bits of the museum out to them, and we were going into their community settings, and we were saying, right, here's a little bit about what we're doing. Are you interested in this? Like, what do you think? And I suppose it's kind of, it's given away a bit of that power in a way to the community to ask them what they want. You know, we do lots of surveys in the community, so we'll send surveys. I'm sure you do the same, and they say, well, we want this and we want that. And sometimes some of the things that local people ask for are just ridiculous, quite frankly. You know, I'll say that here. It's just ridiculous. So you have to kind of draw a line between, okay, you know, these are things that the local people are asking us or saying that's what they want us to do more of. So we'll do more of that. So the families program is a really good example. Like, we've always had quite a big families program, like most big museums. But through that families program, and when we made it completely free, because some of it used to charge, but then we just stopped charging because that was another barrier. So that is definitely another barrier. But through the families program, it doesn't matter what we do, because through the little people, the small children, we're gradually winning those parents and the older people over by saying, okay, you know, just come in and do this with the kids. And then while you're here, what kind of things do you like doing? Like, is this of interest to you? So, and maybe it's just about giving them the opportunity to do some of the programming. So actually asking the community, well, why don't we give it over to you and see what you would do and see what happens? And then is it more about, you know, how you can maybe think about interpretation of the collection? Could that be changed? That's a bit more appealing. Could the community come in and rewrite labels or something like that? You know, there's all these different ways, I think, of, it's trial and error, but there's always going to be that sort of, I'm not interested, and I think we'll never win those people over. You know, I get on the local bus, and every morning the bus driver says, oh, you going to that museum again? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, it's rubbish, I've never been in it, and I'm never ever going to win him over. So I just say, okay, that's fine, that's all right. So yeah, I think it's just maybe definitely through those children's do you do children's programs, Jasmina? Do you do like stuff?
Yeah, it's usually workshops, but with lots of, because my focus is like, maybe it's a problem in me, it's limited by archaeology and Roman stuff. So I want to introduce to them how Romans made mosaics. So I do that in a way that from kindergarten they can do to 99 years.
Yeah.
So everything adjusted to them, but I want to introduce them to mosaics, to lamps, to everything, to all objects, to speak about Romans, about the history of because I think that's why I'm in the museum.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That to them, but in a way that they would, if I don't organize that with a specific person that I know who is my friend, and she's, for example, or he are teachers in a kindergarten or in elementary school or in high school or whatever, and they would bring some children to come to the workshop. No other interest outside that, you know, it's for me, I like to open all to everyone, like you said. It has to be open to everyone, but then I can't be arranging people to come to the workshop or to lecture. I have
Sure.
to see what are they interested in.
Yeah, yeah.
So in that way, and you know, we don't do surveys. That's a huge problem with our. It's like it's only one way. You know, my English is not good enough to explain that. But I think that you're right. Surveys are really important, and I think that we have to introduce that. And be more connected in that way with the community. Yeah, that's a good
for
point.
sure. And I think just in terms of school children coming in, I think it's maybe just a survey. The first survey could be with local teachers and kindergarten teachers, where what is it you would like us to do? Like, how can we help you teach the curriculum to your children? Like, what can we do? We are a resource in the city. How can we help you do your job better and make it more fun? So it's like that's maybe the hook in. But so maybe the first survey could be with the local educators, and you could get them in and say, this is what we've got, you know, how would you use this? Or is there a way of having handling pieces that can go into the school, or, you know, 3D objects that you could get made that are kind of, that could go out in handling boxes, maybe? These are all different ways.
Yeah, there are a lot of ideas, but the problem is a little bit the whole situation in the country is not exactly. No one is interested to do anything, you know. Even if you speak to teachers, it's like, I don't want to do anything additional.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to, like, for this small salary, I don't want to put myself in.
Yeah.
But these are, I understand these problems, but I was just thinking about some similarities. Although you are from a richer country and you've got resources, we don't have any grants, anything, no charities. You know, they usually don't give the, money to the museums because they are already giving money to the children, but don't, you know, not for workshops in the museum. So it's like a huge problem because they would always say, okay, we've got money, but we are giving money to sports societies, to children who are ill or something like that, who need the medicine. You know, it's always someone who is more important than the museum.
Yes.
But museums also need money. We can't work without money. I can have lots of ideas, but if I don't have money to, if I invite someone to do something, I have to give him resources to do something.
Yeah, of course.
Say, oh, keep do that. It's not possible. So,
I think
it's a bit, but for me, it's to hear. Sorry, my
your sound is not so good right now.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's fine.
I just would like, because of this, just would like to thank you very much. It was a fantastic and really optimistic way of doing this job. A beautiful job, but very difficult.
No, I completely agree with everything you're saying. It's very challenging, and I think my final word on what you were saying, Jasmina, would be maybe it's about reimagining what the museum is. So if people are given money to other charitable, you know, other needs in the city, then how can you work in partnership with them, perhaps to kind of leverage some of that money to you? So, you know, for instance, we get a lot of money in the city here to support babies who are born, you know, underweight and that kind of thing, because there's quite a lot of drug problems in the city. So a lot of babies get born and they're underweight and they have lots of problems. It's a big problem here. So quite rightly, they get lots of money. get lots of money to support these babies. So we thought, okay, well, how can we work together with that organization? So now we have the baby clinic in the museum. So we actually work with the baby clinic. So the parents, the young moms or whatever, bring the babies in, they get weighed in the museum, and then they start doing some of our programs. So we gradually get them a bit more interest. So it's that kind of pull. But we're not saying we are a baby clinic. We're just saying, oh yeah, we can host that here. And by the way, there's all these other things you might be interested in. So it takes time. We've got a few people who are interested. It's a long-term project, but it's a bit of a start. So it's maybe reimagining how the space could be, and not ignoring the expertise in terms of your collection. But it's like, what else could the space be? That's maybe a way of thinking about it too. What partners you could work with.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have run out of the time. Thank you so much, Joanna, for today's presentation. And thank you also to your team. I will meet you soon, so thank you. Thank you everyone for participating in today's talk.
Thank you. And yeah, any questions, just have a look at our website and drop us a line. Happy to try and help and carry on the conversation. Thanks
I
so
just
much.
sent also the link of your website in this chat box here, so people can check it.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.